It was a typical Tuesday morning. John was a driver of a city bus with more than 15 years of driving experience. He was familiar with most of the regular commuters and known for his gentle nature and superb professionalism. He always greeted people with a smile, regardless of whether they looked grumpy or prominent. But that morning, something was to happen. Extraordinary. Something that would strain his patience more than ever. And as he came up to the bus stop, she stepped into his path. She was a tall, elegantly dressed woman, down to the designer clothes head to toe, which were finished off with sunglasses and an oversized hat that screamed money. As soon as she stepped onto the bus, it became evident that she felt better than everyone sitting on that bus. She tossed her fare at John, not even bothering to put it in the machine right. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice mild but firm. "Could you please put your fare in the machine?" The woman slowly pulled her shades back and glared at him. "Do you know who I am?" she hissed. "I don't have time for this. Just drive the bus." John, as a professional, took a deep breath. "Sorry, but everyone has to pay fare properly, ma'am. I'm just following the rules." She rolled her eyes dramatically and, with an exaggerated sigh, finally placed her fare in the machine. She was not done, however. As she walked down the aisle to find a seat, she continued to mutter under her breath in such a way that everyone heard what was going on. "Can you believe this? A bus driver acting like he's some kind of authority figure? How pathetic." The other passengers looked at each other, most of them rolling their eyes at her arrogance, but no one had anything to say. John, though, remained calm. Of course, he had heard his all throughout his years of service. But this woman was a whole other story altogether. It became worse when the lady began to scrutinize everything that the bus hit and began complaining about the poor quality of public transport. She even had the temerity to counsel John that he should learn how to drive properly. The discomfort of other people intensified, but John remained serene as he drove the bus like the professional he was. However, it was at that moment that the bus hit a small pothole in the road. It was nothing out of the ordinary, but the woman acted as though it were some kind of major disaster. She stood up sharply, holding onto the railings for dramatic effect, and marched her way to the front of the bus. "Are you trying to kill us?" she yelled. "Do you even know how to drive? Or did they just hand you a license because you are desperate for work?" Inside, he was boiling. She was pushing all the limits, and John knew it. "So that's he. I'm sorry." He wasn't going to let her get onto him. Years of experience had been polished into his head by others. Don't let them get to you. End. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady, "please sit back down. This is not in my control, but I promise you I'm doing all I can to give you a smooth ride." "Smooth ride?" she jeered, flicking her hand at him. "This isn't exactly smooth, and I have an inkling you wouldn't know smooth if it knocked you squarely in the kisser." John was calm enough, but he felt the tension brew inside the bus. The other passengers looked uneasy, but no one could stand up to her. That was when John decided that was it. He wouldn't fight a word with her, but he brewed up a plan that would make her learn her lesson in a way she never would forget. Curious about what happened next? Stay tuned to find out. As she approached the central part of the city, she didn't stop raging at the bus driver and went on to criticize how public transport was something so subpar for a person of her caliber. She complained about how the city was full of commoners and couldn't wait until she went back home to her penthouse apartment in some high-rise far from all this filth. It was apparent that this woman thought that she should be accorded special status because she was rich and had some high status she held. The bus was moving to one of the most affluent areas of the city. It was a locality in which a lot of influential people lived, some of whom were even John's recurring riders. He was familiar with the roads and also knew that a stop was present just before a sharp turn, which most riders did not like stopping there, since nothing other than an open, wide street and giant houses of luxuries was there at that place. As the bus was approaching the stop, John flipped on the bus's intercom. "Next stop, Riverview Heights," he calmly stated. The angry woman sat up now. "This is my stop," she bellowed. She grabbed her designer handbag and strode towards the front of the bus, where she would make her dramatic exit. She did expect to be taken to the curb after all, but John had more dramatic plans. As the bus came to a stop, John carefully and deliberately stopped it short of the curb, allowing quite a large puddle of water to be left between the bus and the sidewalk. He had seen the little puddle of rain early and had envisioned how it would make for a perfect part of his plan. The woman in her stiletto heels and haughty attitude did not notice the puddle on the spot at first. Stepping down from the bus, and when taking her last step down from the bottom stair, her foot landed squarely in the middle of the water. Splash! Her foot sank into the puddle, splattering dirty water onto her designer shoes and upper legs. The gasp that escaped her mouth could be heard across the street. For a moment, there was no sound. The other passengers stared, wide-eyed, unsure of what to do next. And then she let out. You idiot!" she shrieked, looking at him over her shoulder. "You did that on purpose, didn't you? How dare you? These shoes are worth more than your entire salary." John looked at her calmly. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, his voice as calmly suave as ever. "I didn't see the puddle. I guess sometimes things are just out of our control." Her eyes have gone wide with anger, but she doesn't have the words. She can feel her pants becoming soaked through. Standing there, fuming, as the doors of the bus shut in her face. John begins slowly driving away, then catches himself looking back in the rearview mirror and sees this woman standing there, impotent, without anyone to turn to for help. But John didn't smile, not really, just smiled to himself. It wasn't out of vengeance, it was just teaching her a little humility and reminding everyone, from time to time in life, that regardless of how much money someone may have or who in power is, at the end of it all, everyone in terms of respect is equal. People were relaxed and smiling at each other as if they all recognized the quiet victory John had that particular day. And though the rich lady had probably ruined her expensive shoes, John was sure that she would think twice before, ever again, treating another human like she did him on that particular day. Hours later, after his shift, John sat in the break room of the bus depot, sipping on his coffee. He ran over the day he had just been through. For all of John's years driving, he had never met anybody quite like that woman. What she never realized was that her attitude and actions were a reflection of something much deeper, a product of having been favored with privilege and insulated from the challenges and hardships that most people face. To her, someone like John, whose rigor in work is daily, was worthless. In John's mind, though, that is where the matter lies. And so, John reminded her, with that splash of water, of something she had not thought about in many years, that nobody is above someone else. We're all just trying to get through life, and the other thing is what counts. That is, treating people well and respecting them. The next day, John was once again traveling the daily route. The bus ran through the city streets, pointing out to him a known face waiting at one of the stops. That was but one of the regulars who saw the events the previous day take their course. The passenger smiled as he got into the bus. "Good morning, John," he said with a grin. "Yesterday something came along, John grinned. "Yeah, it really did." As the man sat down, he turned, his face close, and said, "You handled it like a pro. She had it coming." John just nodded, smiled, and continued driving. He wanted neither congratulations nor praise, and that's how, with a splash and just a little clever thinking, John takes what otherwise could have become a terrible day into a lesson in humility for all parties. It was not a question of hurting someone, and therefore a wrong thing to do, but an opportunity to show that for all anyone is, there will always be kindness and respect winning the day. And that's how simple it is to get your revenge without being cruel. Will you take some learnings home from this story? Let us know in the comments below. Until then, stay subscribed for more interesting stories. Stay kind, my friends. Curious about the dramatic showdown when an anaconda wrapped around a jaguar cub? Check out this video to find out what happened next.